Welcome to Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson, the podcast that celebrates the people, places, and stories that make Rocky and the wider central Queensland community extraordinary. I firmly believe we're sitting on a golden goose in this region, and I love meeting the people who are doing the quiet work behind the scenes to keep the community thriving. They run our sports clubs, they organise our charities, they support the people who are lost in the system, and they volunteer their time so generously. And I feel like the luckiest person in the world when someone shares their story with me privately. And now I'm privileged to bring their stories and achievements to you, the listeners of Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson. Sometimes they wonder why they were asked, thinking that what they're doing and what they've done is not that big of a deal. And I can hand on heart tell you that it absolutely is. Other times, my guests are ecstatic to be asked and they look forward to sharing a piece of their Rocky and Central Queensland story. Thank you for listening in. I truly appreciate you being here. Today's guest is Kris Cotter. Now, Kris is someone who embodies inspiration and, oddly, to pair it with, safety. Every single time I think about safe workplaces, safe construction sites, workplace health and safety in general, the person that comes to my mind is Kris Cotter. And Kris, I'm looking forward to unpacking your story for the listeners of the podcast. I, of course, know lots of your story. I'm so lucky. But I also just wanted to shout out as well, you are bringing something to Rockhampton that's not really been seen here before, and I look forward to unpacking that as well. But that's the Regional Safety Expo. Now, this is an Australia-wide approach to bringing all of the important conversations together when it comes to workplace health and safety. So you are bringing this Australia-wide Safety Expo to Rockhampton at the Robert Schwarten Pavilion at the showgrounds, and it's just a mammoth task. And I really need to stop talking for a second, but I could talk about you and your achievements and your story. I could just do this podcast without you, really. No, but honestly, welcome to the podcast. I am so excited you're here and that you said yes.
Thanks, Nyree. I'm excited that you asked me. Thank you so much. And you probably could do the podcast without me because we have known each other for a while now. And I love talking to you when we catch up, and whether it's in networking or socially or whatever it is, it's great. So it's really good to be here to be able to talk about all the things that are happening with my business and the expo for sure. Thank
And I'm really keen to unpack your business and your journey for the listeners because, you did come out of a prominent position in your field, for the government and other roles, of course, that you've had over the years. And you now work for yourself in the field of safety. And it's, that, as you would know, that particular topic is one of those things like it's HR. Let's just put that over there. Like that can just deal with itself. But, when it comes to small, medium, and even large businesses, they need people that know their stuff, and you really know your stuff. I've heard you speak so passionately about workplace health and safety and the reasons why, of course, so many times. I'm super lucky. Before I make you unpack it again, though,
you.
tell me, if you could be an expert at anything at all in the world, what would it be and why?
Well, this is going to be, and I had to really think about it, but I love cheese. All right. So I love
Nice.
cheese. And I already kind of focus on risk, right? This is my day to day thing. So I thought about if I could be an expert, I would love to be an expert, firstly, to understand how and why people run down hills to chase a rolling ball of cheese down the hill. I would love to be the person that grabs the cheese because I love cheese, but that would be like an expert at voluntarily hurling myself down a hill to grab the cheese at the end.
Interesting one. I did not expect that.
I had to think of something I like, something's related to me. And I'm like, you know what? That is definitely something that, I may not never do it, but if I could do it tomorrow, I'd probably give it a go.
And, running down a hill after cheese with lots of people around you is a very risky event.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
so for someone who's so focused on safety, it's an interesting choice, but I like it.
Can I say something that they
Yes.
often say the riskiest people are the safest because they think about all the risk far more than what someone who doesn't think that their job's risky or what they're doing is about to be risky. So, yeah.
That is a good point. Very good point. And, even some of the planning that I've done in the past for different activities, and you do a risk assessment, of course, particularly when it comes to young people, and you start thinking about things that you would never have thought about had you not sat down and gone, what are all the things that could actually go wrong with this particular event that we're undertaking? And then you obviously mitigate it and you create plans. And even just that awareness and those thoughts create
Mhm.
for environment. So, yeah, maybe you would be the safest person running
Yeah.
downhill chasing after cheese. I love it. So, tell me, I've of course gone on and on and on about safety. And, I know your career and your education and your story. I'm super lucky, but, let's unpack that a little bit. So, share with us those key moments, people, influences, experiences that have really have come from your early life that have shaped who you are today?
Yeah, so I suppose it really, first of all, I'll go back. So I was raised by a single dad. So I had a very strong male dominance in my life. It was my dad and my brother and I. And he's a very hard worker. So I always had that to start with. And then after I decided to have 5 kids and I went into the construction industry, I had a lot of men that were my guiding lights, that were teaching me how to work on the construction industry and what to do, what not to do, who to speak to. And at the time, there was a union delegate that said, "Hey, on a rainy day, say, come on, you can come with me, Kris, and let's do a safety inspection." And I'm new to all of this, nothing. He would have to be my first influence in the safety space. And he took me on all rainy days to do these safety inspections. And he said to me one day, he said, "Kris, you've got a real eye for safety. This should be something you get into." And of course, I'm like, yeah, right. I've only just joined the construction industry in the
Mm,
field. And I thought, maybe that's something that I will turn to. And that's what I ended up doing. So
mm,
he was my first influence into health and safety. And then I suppose having my accident and meeting the people that I've met since having my workplace accident, where I had that 8-foot steel scaffold plank fall 6 meters and hit my shoulder and
mm,
elbow and crushed my hand and nearly got me in the back of the neck, which is super scary. Single mum, five
mm,
kids. So it was the people that I met since then that said, use your knowledge on site. I
mm,
went to university. So speaking to other students that at uni of saying you're on the right path, but even doctors and nurses are saying you should get into safety. You've now been in the industry and you were seriously injured in the workplace. You've got a lot
mm,
of experience and knowledge and a story to tell people.
mm.
So, of course, that, though the people that I've met along the way have been a lot of the influences to get me into the safety industry to start with. And then I've met a lot of people since then, of course, in being in safety, my uni lecturers, other safety consultants, there's people locally and through the Australian Institute of Health and Safety, memberships and stuff like that, that just really support you in what you do. And meeting people like you, Nyree, and other people in the community and being part of, Chamber of Commerce networks. Like there's so much support in our regions
Yeah.
that I don't feel that if I lived in the city, I'd probably get the same support because it
Mm,
feels like you're part of it's more of a family community than just a town community. And it
mm,
doesn't matter, what you're doing, there's always someone that will back you and say, "You got this, you've got this, keep going," or "That's a really good decision." Also say, "I really don't think you should do that," or "This is my opinion," and you take it on board because you respect, what they say to you.
mm. Yeah, no, you do have quite a unique story. And, even being in a male dominated industry of construction, having an eye for safety and then experiencing a workplace safety incident yourself and then going through that process. And you've done a master's degree, haven't you, as well as a degree in safety?
Yeah, yeah, I did. I did
Mm.
a Masters of Advanced Safety Science Practice.
Like putting all of that together, it's almost like when I look at you and I think about safety and what you bring to the table, it's almost like you're a unicorn because there might be a lot of people that accidentally get into safety and they may not be in as high risk fields such as construction. Or they may be at university because they've got a passion or an interest in safety and workplace safety, but don't have any lived experience. Like, you've got this whole breadth of experience, not only from an academic perspective, but lived experience, workplace. You know what it's like on a construction site.
Definitely.
Like, I'm sure there are a lot of women who do, but I certainly don't know what it's like on a construction site. But yeah, it's like that. I just see unicorn. I don't know if I haven't told you that ever before,
In
but
steel cap boots.
yes, yes. Let's get you a shirt made.
Yeah,
Unicorn
yeah.
in steel cap boots.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
You do rock some pretty cool outfits, so I think we could just add it to the collection.
Wait till the expo, then you'll see a really cool outfit.
Oh, nice. And while we're on the expo, what is the date of that expo?
So it's the 6th of August at the
Mhm.
Robert Shorten Pavilion, and it's from 8 a.m. till 4 p.m.
Mm.
There is a VIP cocktail event happening at Cocoa Brew the night before,
Mhm.
and that's from 6 till 10, and that's for VIPs. So it's just for sponsors. So you have to be a sponsor and you have to be a booth holder. So they're the
Mm.
only people. It's just so they can network because they're going to be in their booths and doing their own thing on the day. So
Mm.
they get to connect and meet each other the night before.
Yep. And what sort of, I know we're a little bit off topic here, but what sort of booth holders have you got coming along that will be actually exhibiting at the day on the expo?
So we've got a range of booth holders. So we've got Turner Demolition and Asbestos.
Mhm.
So we've got our
Mm.
local asbestos. We've also got some people from out of town as well. We do have Blackwoods from in town. Blackwoods will be there. So they're going to have all their safety products and stuff that
Yep.
they sell as well. CQ University, they're coming along to talk about, different pathways that they have in the health and safety space as well. Alkalizer. So they're well known
Mm.
around Australia. They do a lot of alcohol and drug testing.
Mhm.
We also have another company called Path Tech that's coming along that they do this very similar to Alkalizer. We have IQSS. Please forgive me for not remembering what IQSS stands for, but they're from Bundaberg. They're coming up and they have safety products as well that they sell.
Mm.
There's a few of the people that are coming along. I don't remember them all off the top of my head. So,
Mm.
but we do have a good range of people. And then, of course, we have a lot of guest speakers that are coming along to speak as well, which will be really interesting, gigs to listen to.
Absolutely. And I often think, like, I think about all of the different professional development that's available for business in general or small business or even professional development that you receive in the workplace if you work for a big organization. Safety, I've not seen anything like this expo in my experience, either in corporate or small business over the years. And like, I love a good expo. I really do. And I know that's an odd thing to say, but I love learning. Like, last year, for example, I went to the the Australian Aftermarket Automotive Association Expo down in Brizzy, or conference or seminar, whatever they called it. And just the stall holders, being able to connect with them, figuring out things that exist in the market that you didn't realize existed, and just connecting with those suppliers. It's such an amazing opportunity. I know I valued it for the automotive industry. I could just imagine, like, if people are not quite sure if they're getting it right, or they're not quite sure what products are out there, or PPE, for example, with Blackwoods, or what to consider when it comes to demolition and asbestos. And we've got
Yeah.
the local guys who are going to be there. It's just going to be such a great event.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to coming along as a small business owner.
Yeah. It's definitely for all business types because everyone
Mm.
knows they've got safety in there. So another one I thought of too is RPS Fire. So they help check your
Mm.
fire extinguishers and do all your, your sprinklers in your buildings and stuff to make sure that if there is a fire or something happening, but it's that cross industry. So it doesn't matter if you are, just say you work in a restaurant in hospitality and you're coming along, there's going to be businesses there that you didn't even realize that are going to be able to give you information that you
Mm.
didn't know about. And that's the big thing for me. Regional. So
Mhm.
events like this always happen in the city. Like I just
Mm.
went to the health and safety show in Brisbane like 5 weeks ago.
Mm.
They go to all the capital cities. The people in the regions, us regional people, we're the backbone of the country. But
Mhm.
we don't get events like this. Like we do get some trade shows and, we do get some similar smaller type event, but nothing around health and safety. There's
Mm.
never anywhere where people can go and talk to different industries, different businesses that can help them with their health and safety. So that's
Mm.
exactly why, I was bringing the health and
Mm.
safety expo. And of course, I've got my passion for safety, and that's the
Mm.
whole the reason why it's here as well.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about that journey. So, you did share a little bit before about getting into the construction industry, being told you had an eye for safety, having an accident yourself. But what led you on this current path? Like I of course, know you. You left a great, well-paying role in the
Mhm.
government. You've studied throughout the time of raising 5 children, which is no small feat. What's kind of put you on this trajectory of safety unicorn is my new name for you.
I love it. That's cool. Look, there's been a lot of different things, and I suppose the accident was the big thing for safety. And when I went to university, I kind of always had, because I started university at an older age, like I already had 5 children, I'd already worked. I wasn't straight out of school, even
Mm,
university was scary at the time. It was like, okay, I need to do something that I can eventually work for myself.
mm,
So I already always had that thought like in the back of my mind about, okay, I want to work for myself. I want to be able to help people in the way I want to help them, not the way that someone's telling me how to do it.
mm,
So I, went on that journey and I thought, well, I need to work for some different industries. I need to do safety in the workplace as much as I can first to get that extra knowledge. And a part of it is like, I'm not ready to be a business owner, which was a lot of people that want to go into small business. There's always that, oh, not yet, not yet. So there was
mm,
that. But I also wanted to get a bit more broader knowledge on health and safety. So not just in construction. I did some mining, went to correctional services and was the safety coordinator at the prison here in Rocky for just over nearly 4.5 years. To a consulting company, that was my kind of next step in, let me go and work for a consulting company. Then I know what a consulting business kind of looks like. So I
mm,
was a consultant for somebody else for a while. And then, of course, I went with the regulator. So being an inspector with Workplace Health and Safety Queensland back in the construction industry, I
mm,
then got the insider knowledge on, hey, this is what the regulator is looking for when they come to your site. So I
mm,
suppose it was all of those last few jobs that I had and being with the regulator that I thought, you know what, I really want to be able to help people in my way now. I
mhm,
think I've got a really broad understanding on what different industries want and look for. And now I know what the regulator looks for when they come to site, being an ex-inspector. So it's now or never. And
right,
I was turning 50. So you heard all about my whirlwind trip for my 50th birthday overseas, never been overseas in my life. And I'd mentioned to my manager at the time that, look, I'm looking at resigning next year. So I wanted to give them enough time to know that, hey, next year I don't know when, but I want to let you know that I'm going to go next year. Being
mm,
a government agency, while you're still there and you haven't resigned, they can't look at employing someone else.
mm.
They did ask, can you give us a bit of an idea? Can you give us a date? And I thought, you know what? I know I'm going. I need to sit down and really think about when am I going to go. So they've got a date. This is my resignation date. So I decided that the last day of February in 2024, they got my extra day of the year. That was my last day. And it gave me 6 weeks after I got back from my 50th, 2-month 50th holiday to come back to work, get back to reality and then get into the workplace. So there was a long journey. It wasn't something I jumped into,
Mm.
but it was definitely wanting to understand the different industries. And then it was just the right time. 50, why not? Let's go out and do it.
No, I love that. And you've been so fierce and bold in your pursuit of small business success. And it is honestly admirable to watch. You've got a goal, you've got everything behind you, you've got the education, the experience, the lived experience, and you've gone, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. And you unapologetically work towards that every single day. And I honestly do love watching you on socials, of course. That sounds really odd.
Isn't that where you see everybody now? Like everyone kind of updates their journey. If you might not see them in person, but you can see what they're up to.
Yes, yes. No, it is fantastic. And, just seeing you work with bigger companies now as well and down in New South Wales and in Queensland, it's odd, but I'm so proud of you. Like,
Thanks,
it's
Nyree.
such an amazing
Thank
achievement and you
you.
just don't give up. You just keep going. Like I know you had a quieter period for about 2 or 3 months there. Small business is not easy and you still showed up every day, one foot in front of the other. You know what you're working towards. And I mean, if anybody needs inspiration in the type of attitude that you need to start a small business, jump on to the Safety Unicorn.
Yeah.
Because you are relentless in your pursuit of small business success.
Thank you, Nyree. And look, I've learned from other small businesses and people that I've met, and even yourself, like talking to you over the years that we've known each other, and other people that we've met in similar networks that we're in, or the same networks that we're in. It's all those little bits of information and listening. And sometimes I think to myself, I talk too much. I got to shush and listen. But then I walk away and I realize I actually got so much information. So I must have shut up for a little while. Because I do feel like I do talk a lot and I don't get a lot, but I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't met a lot of the people that I've met. And Rockhampton is the second longest place I've ever lived in my life. So I've been here for 14 years now. So I'm not maybe a local, so to say, but I feel like I'm a local because everyone's so, accepting and backs everybody. But it's not something you go into just half-assed, sorry to say, just, be real. You really got to go in and say, I'm determined, and not give up on yourself, because you got to back yourself first. And that's what I've done with the Expo. And as you know, like, I was trying to do a lot of that last year and I postponed. But you know what? I knew that this event was going to happen, and I had to go 4 months out, I think 4.5 months out. I had to go, the reality is I've been trying to do all this on my own, and it's not going to work. And I postponed it to this year. And the best thing I could have done, because now, I rebranded it to make it its own, expo, and a lot more focus on being able to get out there and ask for help. That's a big thing that I realized, that people don't mind helping. And if they say no, you're in no worse position than what you were before, and ask someone else if you need to. Like, literally, people, don't be scared. So I'm loving this unicorn. We're now at food. So you wait, you'll end up with I'll have a shirt soon. It'll have a unicorn with steel cap.
I'm going to make that shirt. I've got myself a cricket. I've got some pretty flashy vinyl.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Yes. I've got like a stack of plain black shirts that I can just whip something up on, make you a
perfect.
safety
I'm looking
unicorn
forward to it
shirt.
then. Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to get it its own brand, like its own persona.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we got a thing. We got a thing happening here. We got a thing.
We do. So being in Rocky, of course, and on the Capricorn coast has shaped a lot of your journey, particularly for 14 years. And I have to agree with you that, in even organisations such as the Chamber of Commerce, and being connected in that network, for example, even jumping along to the LinkedIn locals that happen, that Kieran organises, and Regional Women's Network, of course, and
Regional Women's Network is part of who I've been. I was president before Melissa was president, after Ange was president. And I was such a big part of that for 4.5 years of actually being in the committee, So she's my hairdresser. Oh, well, Haley is, but her hairdressing salon's been my hairdressing salon for 4 years. So it's that that's that connection. You might not see each other and be there all the time, but it's that everyone just feels like family.
And that's what Rocky does. I was having a conversation with someone this morning. I was a local politician. I was at a breakfast event, and, they said, in the Rockhampton community, you turn up at a breakfast event, for example, and you look around the room and you see business owners, professionals, people who live, work, play in this region. And you could literally look around the room and put your finger on every single person and list 1, 2, or 3 different community organisations, not-for-profits or charities that they're involved in. And that is what regional Queensland is about. You won't get the same if you in the capital cities, for example. And, yes, we're crying mid-podcast because we're reflecting on Melissa and the very sad and premature passing of her, president of Regional Women's Network. But, it's people like her that make this community what it is. And I guess for me to ask you, what has Rocky really meant to you, being the second longest place that you've ever lived? What has this community done for you, and what does it mean to you?
When I talk to people about where I'm from, I'm from Rocky. I don't say I'm from Mount Isa, because that's where I spent most of my growing up life. But Rocky is, you get messages from people like, oh, I don't like Rocky, or Rocky this or whatever. And it's like, I turned up in Rockhampton after living in Gladstone for just over 4 years, and I'm I'm like, I love Rocky. It is the central to everywhere as well. Like I can go north, I can go south, I can go west. It's right there, but it's also then just it's the people. Like Rocky just feels like home to me. Like, thinking about wanting to move somewhere else or leave, I always want to come back to Rocky. Like I've got a caravan now, so I can go wherever I go to. Um,
Awesome.
Yeah, so Rocky just feels like home. Like literally, I haven't lived in any other town where I can say I feel like I'm part of a family community. And, like you were saying before, when we go to these networking events, whether it's, LinkedIn Local or Chamber of Commerce or Regional Women's Network, where, so many people are linked to so many you know, community events and charities and just support that's in the community. Like, you may live in a suburb in the city. I've never lived in the city. Like Rockhampton's the largest city I've ever lived in.
Mm,
I lived in Townsville and Cairns when I was younger, but they were nothing like they are now. They were probably like
yeah.
Rockhampton, back
Yeah.
then. To me, I just feel I'm home. I'm
Mm.
home here. This is, there's so many. I can walk down the street, and if I've got someone, family or friends coming from out of town, and I'm walking down the street, there's always someone I can say hello to or talk to.
Mm.
I don't think there's, anywhere else you could go other than a regional town, country towns where you have that feeling of friendship with so many people.
Yeah, absolutely. We are in a really unique spot here. And yeah, it's almost like, especially when you're in small to medium business and you just might be working on your own or with a small team, being in that broader engaged in the broader community and being involved in things that are bigger than just yourself, it's almost like you've got this extended workplace network
Yeah.
because everybody cares about what you're up to, and yeah, they love to add value and help and support.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like,
definitely.
I can imagine your accident at work sounds horrible. It would have been awful and painful. It would have been a significant challenge. But you've also had some incredibly proud moments just in your short time as a business owner, but also prior to that as well in paid employment. Like, share with what's the proudest moment that you've had in your life or career, either or?
Well, look, I couldn't just say becoming a mum because I've been a mum 5 times. So I don't really, I can't pick a favorite. So I
Mm.
suppose becoming a mum's your first one, right? It's kind of
Mm.
like most mums would say, yeah, okay, that's a natural thing. You become a mum, and it's becoming a nana or a nana chook. As you know, my nickname's Chook.
Yes.
So my grandkids call me Nana Chook. Becoming a nana was like, oh my Lord, I didn't think I could love anyone more than I love my own children, but I love my
Mm.
grandchildren even more. So not that they like to hear that, but they understand. I suppose not talking about like family and personal stuff like that. I've won a few awards now, which was, the first one was a business professional of the year, which I loved. And I was working for the department when I won that award. So I was working for someone else.
Mm.
And then since then, I've put stepped up and gone, what if I don't back myself? And I, put my name in to be a Stevie nominee, and I
Mhm.
was a finalist for a Stevie Award. And I suppose before that, it was actually Awesome Women in Construction. So Awesome Women in Construction is probably my nearest and dearest award that I've won. It was called Environmental Excellence, but it was environmental and safety. It was both.
Mhm.
And it's construction specific. So I
Mhm.
suppose that was my first I won an award in the construction industry. So that,
Mm.
meant a lot. But I suppose the biggest moment was going to New York to accept my Silver Stevie Award on stage. It's like Silver Stevie Award for International Woman of the Year Industry, Dean Carter. Like it was just the way they said my name. And I had 30
Mm.
seconds to get up and speak. And it was surreal,
Mm.
like standing up in front of I think it was 300 or so international people from all over the world in New York
Mm.
City, where I'd never been before. That was like, oh my God, I just won like me?
Yes.
Christine Carter from Rockhampton, Australia. It was just, yeah, it was so good. I just, it's definitely a proud moment, but I'm already proud of what I'm doing with the expo because this is like extreme. Like there's no
Mm,
doing things little. And you mentioned it before, like I just go out there. But
mm,
the expo is probably, I'm already proud of what I've done. So
mhm.
when it happens, as much as it's going to be, it's happened, it's done, I pulled it off. Um, I'm going to be really proud that I bought something like this to a regional area that's not had something like this before.
Mm.
So definitely proud of a lot of things that I've done.
Yeah, it's incredible. And you are relentless. And I do love that. And speaking of that relentless pursuit, what is it that is inside of you, that fire that drives you forward every day? Like, and of course, I don't want to dwell on the not so great times in small business, but you have a 1 or 2 months that are really quiet, for example. What is that thing inside of you that keeps you getting up every morning and pushing ahead?
There's probably a few things, I suppose. It's being able to leave like a legacy of something different for, I love life. There might
Mm,
have been times in my life where I felt like, oh my God, is this really what life has? But, it's that I love where I live. I love my family, who I have in my, people in my network. It's just getting up and being able to live every day the way I want to live.
mm,
It's that taking care of me now. I wish I would have thought of that more like 50 years ago, or maybe 40 years ago
yeah.
even. Taking care of me and putting myself first is what helps me then help other people. So I couldn't pinpoint like a specific thing. It's
Mm,
just like we're still, and look, this is going to sound negative, but I mean it this is why I'm trying to do such positive things. We're still killing people in the workplace.
mhm,
We're still hurting people in the workplace. There are
mm,
still people, like over 100,000 people a day around the world. Over 100,000 people don't make it home to their family every single day
mm.
around the world. That's
Wow.
just ridiculous. Like we can't control other countries, of course. We can only control our own space. But I suppose if there is one thing, is being able to be that one positive influence in one workplace that helps them make sure their people go home the same way they came, or if not with more knowledge and better than what they went,
Mm,
came to work. So for me, the lived in experience that I have had with, potentially not making it home is a big driver that then helps me go, hey, we need to make sure this doesn't happen to people in the workplace. So getting up every
mm.
day to help people, that's exactly what I try and do.
Yeah, I love that. And if you could give one piece of advice to the next generation coming along after us, what would it be? Anything at all. Could be work related or life. Any mantra that you've got.
It's ask the questions. There's no dumb question. The only dumb question there is the one you don't ask.
Hmm.
So I know I used to be like, oh no, I'm not going to ask that. They're going to laugh at me if I ask that. But I think as society, a lot of society now, we've learned that just do it. Just ask the question because people are going to either answer you or you're going to get naysayers. You're going to get people, doesn't matter where you go, but just be confident enough to ask the question. Question everything, especially in the workplace, but just ask the questions. Be like a little kid. Why, mum? Oh, how come, mum? The things you used to do when you were little, do it when you're older, even. Ask the questions.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic advice. Thank you. Kris, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on this podcast. I'm so glad you were able to make time for it. And I really look forward to seeing the Regional Safety Expo Australia come to life in Rockhampton and have the big players in our region because we've got so much to offer. But thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Nari. It's been a pleasure. I've loved it. And it's been a really good, chat with you again, but in a different environment. It's been so good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson, proudly brought to you by Marketing Unagency Co., the marketing team who do things very differently and who are determined to make the world of marketing less chaotic and far clearer for small businesses and community groups.